G'day coppers, welcome back to the bush. In this episode of Lock-Up's Fall Driving, we're going to show you how to field splice winch rope. Not like this, more like this, in only a couple of minutes. How to do it in the field, and then how to do it properly and effectively for maximum strength when you're back at camp or back at home. So, let's get into it. First up though, what's actually wrong with this setup? So all it is a stopper knot here, and we've got a loop knot here. And functionally, it's exactly the same. We've got a loop at this end, and we've got a loop at this end. But this knot here significantly reduces the strength of the rope. So this rope, 3/8 Dyneema or synthetic rope, is rated to about 8 ton or thereabouts, depending on the manufacturer. This will reduce the strength of the rope by about 50% or thereabouts. So instead of having 8 ton rope, like you do in this scenario here, we're now down to about 4 ton rope. Issue with that is a lot of winches will actually, on the bottom layer, be able to generate a force of in excess of 4 ton. So now we're able to snap this rope, which is not a good scenario. So we'll get rid of that, and we'll show you how to produce one of these in the field in a couple of minutes. Now, in order to pull this off successfully in the field, you're going to need a couple little bits and pieces. Firstly, you'll need a marker, and it needs to be in a contrasting colour to the rope so you can see it easily. Now, you also need some sort of cutting implement. I'm using a knife here. You can use scissors, but the main thing is it needs to be sharp, properly sharp. I'm talking able to shave the hair off your arm. And if it can't, it'll leave you hacking away at this stuff like Mick Taylor from Wolf Creek. And nobody needs that, so make sure it's sharp. And finally, you're going to need a fid. Now, this is a Factor 55 fid. And it's quite a trendy piece, like most of the Factor 55 stuff. Now, as far as Factor 55 stuff goes, a lot of it, as far as I'm concerned, is a bit like Pandora. It's compulsory if you're running a game-changing 79 build. It's well built. It's possibly a little bit expensive and probably not needed. With the exemption, I've found, of this fid. Now, those who aren't familiar with fids, most of them don't have this metal cage at the back. And all you have to do to lock the cage into the fid, and they use this in electrical installations when they're running wires and whatnot, is instead of running tape to try and hold it against the fid and pull it through the other rope, all you have to do is lock it into the mesh, and that's pretty good. And it'll enable you to drag it through the rope, but we'll show you that in more detail later. Righto, let's get on with that trackside fix. So you need to cut through the damaged piece of rope first and make a nice clean end. So obviously you want to get rid of all these frayed bits and go back to where the rope is solid. This is the other half of the winch rope, so I'll neaten that up there. Now this is where your nice sharp knife's going to come in handy. And even with a razor sharp knife, that's pretty tough to cut through. And you disregard the broken section. Okay, now you need to do some measuring. And it actually says for a 3/8 or 10 mil rope, your bury is 20 to 27 inches. So we'll mark off 27 inches. So that's 7, 14, 21, and 6 is 27 inches. And we'll put a line right around our rope there. So we can clearly see right around that rope. Now the next thing to do is to work out how big a loop you require. Do you require a tiny little loop or something larger? I'm going to go for about that diameter. Just eyeball it there. And then I'm going to put another mark just there on the rope, right around the periphery. What I want to do now is measure back that 27 inches down the rope and put a mark there, right around the periphery again so I can see it. Okay, with that done, we can put the texture to the side and we can make a start with actually making this splice. So we get our fit again, and we'll pop him right into the bottom of there, hold him down and hold on to there. Now this is the back half of our lip, so open it up a little bit and run your feed right through the middle. So approximately about half the braid on one side and half the braid on the other, and pop him through. You might have to separate the braid a little bit to get it through. And drag it right through until we're at that mark. So now we've aligned our two marks here and here. So we've got our eye splice there. What you need to do now is a couple of braids down, you need to separate it and make a bit of a hole there by bird nesting, and then put the fid right down the center. Now it's important that the fid goes right down the center, so you need to keep bird nesting that rope until you can feel the fid going cleanly down the center. If it pokes out the side, well, draw him back in and have another crack. And keep feeding it right down to that 27-inch mark. Now we're up to that mark now, but what I found beneficial is to go a little bit further. So an extra couple of inches, or maybe 50 mil, into the center of that braid. Once you've done that, poke the fid out the side. And this is what's called milking it. Milking the braid until you can cleanly get that fid out. And this is the easy part. Push that metal cage together and put the fid to the side. You need to make sure at this end that our spare bit of rope is down into the middle of the braid. And again, do the same milking procedure. So we've got our two lines marked up here, and just run it through your hand, and the end of that rope will suck into the middle of the main piece of rope. And that is it. What did that take me? A couple of minutes. I'll put it up on the screen how long that took me. And that is a good field repair. That is 90% there. So now our field repair is done. Let's have a look at a permanent repair. How to give you an eye splice that can be a permanent repair, not just a trail repair. And now for our permanent repair. Now, just like the last time, we need to cut off the end. Again with our razor sharp knife, and we dispose of the ratty end. Now we've got a square end there. So now last time, you'll remember, we did a splice that buried 27 inches in the field repair, and that equates to 70 times the diameter of the rope. This time, however, we're using what's called a Brummel splice, I think it's pronounced. It's a self-locking splice, so we don't need to bury quite as deep. And this time we're only going to bury 20 inches or 50 times the diameter of the rope. So let's measure that out for starters. Got our felt tip marker again. So 7, 14 and 6 give us 20 inches. So we'll put a mark completely around there. Now we need to, just like before, work out how long our splice is actually going to be and how round we want it. That looks pretty good to me. So we'll put another line around here. And this is all looking very, very familiar, other than the fact that our berry isn't nearly as deep. With that done, we now need to measure how deep our berry needs to be. And we just back it onto the rope again, and we put a mark again on our winch rope. So this is how our rope ends up. So we got our end here. We got one side of the splice here, and we got the second side of the splice here, and then finally down here we've got our mark where our berry finishes. So it's all looking very familiar other than the berry depth. So we pull back the cage on our fid, insert the rope again. All looking very familiar so far. And we take our rope at the end of our splice and we put our fid through. Just like before. And we line that up to get our 2 marks lined up. Now that's where the similarity between the field repair and the permanent repair finishes. So what we need to do now is a little bit different. We need to separate the fibres on this side. So about 6 on one side, 6 on the other again. And you can use the end of the fid to do this, of course. And you need to open him right up. And I'll show you why in a second. We've got a nice hole there we've created in between the fibres. You get the end of your splice, you push it together and you push it through. And run him out the other side. Now the issue of this, of course, is it's left this rope here, there's a twist in it. So what we do is we get our fid and we pass it back through the other side and we untwist that rope. Now the great thing about the Brummel slice as opposed to the normal splice, the trail repair, is this is now locked. It's self-locking. That's not going anywhere. And that's why our berry doesn't need to be as long. They're all locked up. Beautiful. We can put a bit of tension on that, no problems. But we still need to bury our tail. So just like before, we open it up again, just a little bit below, and we run our fid again down the middle. Right down the middle. Keep birds nesting. I'll fast forward this bit for you so you don't have to watch me doing it twice. Okay, so we're where we was before. Now we take our fid off. Now this is where it differentiates between our field repair again and our permanent repair. What we need to do is we need to taper down this section because an abrupt end like this actually compromises the strength of the rope. Also, you'll see some people for some reason want to put tape around it and then bury the tape inside the rope for some reason. That will also lessen the strength of your rope. You don't want to do either of those two things. So what we need to do is we need to pull some of the fibres out and start about 6 inches back. You don't have to be too pedantic about this. I'm a pedant at the best of times. Not even I get too pedantic about this. Is I'll whip one out of there. Then I'll go around to the other side. Spin it 180 degrees. Go down a little bit. And then put the fid in there. And whip one out of there. And again, spin it maybe 90 degrees. Go down a couple of braids. Whip out another one. And spin it maybe 180 degrees from that position. And whip out another one. So you're trying to create a bit of a taper so it's not a cut off at the end. I might do one more, why not? Sounds like fun. Now you need to cut off all these raggly end bits. Again with your sharp knife, your razor sharp knife. Making sure you're not cutting into the actual rope itself. Cut off all those bits and pieces. And at the end of your rope, you want to taper that off as best you can. Again, if you're not using a sharp knife, this is going to be a bear. So we've got large diameter here, tapering down because we're taking out some of the braids right down to a diagonal cut here. And just as before now, we milk it in. And that's it. That is our permanent repair. The only addition to this perhaps would be if you had a piece of sheath guard to put on there. You'll notice I haven't used a thimble. Now the reason I haven't used a thimble is because it restricts the way that I can use the end of my winch rope. I can join this to a winch extension rope by using the same technique as you use to join a snatch strap. You can't do that if you've got a thimble. You're going to have to put an extra point in there, maybe a shackle if you've got a metal thimble in there, or a soft shackle. You're going to have to put something extra in there, which is an extra point of potential failure. The less things you have in there, and definitely the less metal, the better off you'll be. So with this, I can join to a winch extension rope. Bob's your uncle. In addition to this, if you want to see us joining a rope that's, say, broken in the middle, you can easily and effectively do that. Drop a comment in the comments below and I'll do that video coming up soon. So if you like this video, don't forget to give it the old thumbs up, and if you didn't, by all means, give it a thumbs down. Not once, not thrice, but twice. Thanks guys, we'll see you in the next one. So if you've enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring that bell icon. It's really important to us and you won't miss out on our future content. Now if you want to support the channel, by all means, consider becoming a patron on Patreon, and you get things like early access to our videos on YouTube. Either way, we hope to see you out on the tracks.